Hello, everyone, and welcome to Heart and Hand, the Rangers podcast. This is your extra show for the week. My name is Cammy Bell, and I'm delighted to be joining you again for my second time round this week as I covered for David on Flagship on Monday. Here to make sure that I don't get into any trouble and keeping an order on things is my very, very good friend, Adam Thornton. Adam, thank you for joining me on Extra this week.
No problem, Cammy. It's lovely to be back on.
Thank you, my friend. It's always great to have you here. Adam, we're going to have a little chat around Tuesday night's escapades in Geneva. And Rangers been able to qualify for the next round of the Champions League qualifiers and look forward to our League Cup kickoff as we welcome Morton to Ibrox on Saturday afternoon. Adam, I spoke on the Flagship on Monday about the fact that I'd came out of Ibrox last Saturday against Livingston, and I'll be honest with you, I was in a really optimistic mood. I was really pleased by what we saw. I think if you had said to me, we'll beat Livingston 4-0 quite comfortably, Rabbi Matondo will make the difference, and we'll have a plethora of goal scorers, then I probably would have bitten your hand off for it. And we went into Tuesday, I think, with a decent degree of confidence, and we knew, I think, to be fair, that it would be a different Servette team that we faced. One obviously was going to make a lot of changes following the first leg at Ibrox. How were you feeling going into the game on Tuesday? Were you confident following Saturday's results? Were you slightly nervous? Where were you at?
Probably nervous, I think, just because how early it is in the season. We've obviously been burned before. Maybe not at this stage for a while, but yeah, a little bit nervous. Expected Servette to come out. Maybe not quite as aggressively as they did in the first half. And obviously the heat being a factor, the new signings, the issues with the defence, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, it had all the sort of makings of an upset, will we say, rather than a banana skin, particularly because we could and should have been out of sight in that game. 3 or 4-1 in the first leg probably wouldn't have flattered us. So yeah, it had all the sort of makings of being a Rangers upset in Europe. But yeah, so I was a little bit nervous about it. Obviously, the season hasn't started in the sort of free-flowing, beautiful football style that we would maybe have wanted, which is probably understandable. So yeah, all of that told, I was quite nervous for it, I would say.
Yeah, I think, and it's been interesting to watch how much has been made of this, but when the Danilo miss happened, I did think, my God, we are now entering into potential banana skin territory here.
Yeah.
We know obviously what happened at the end of it. Your boy James Tavernier got us through in the end. We'll come on to that in just a wee bit. It's been interesting to see some of the reaction about the Danilo miss because I'll be honest with you, these things happen in football. I think if he was on a run of 2, 3, 4, 5 goals scored consecutively, then I think he doesn't even bother thinking about that. He just tucks it away. We've seen Alfredo Morelos, miss chances that when he's in a purple patch and he's in a good scoring form, again, he doesn't even have to think twice about. But it has been interesting to see how negatively some of the Scottish media have been able to try and portray some of that.
Yeah, I would like to sort of embrace the positives of it and say it was a really good counter attack from Rangers. I think can't rule out to Cifuentes, who I'm sure we'll come on to. He sort of made a nice run to stretch play, and then that ball in is delicious. Danilo, I think, does quite well. I guess to judge that as well and to make that run and be in the right place and not be offside. It's very easy. We've certainly seen strikers who may have been offside in that situation in the more recent past. So all of that was great. Just has to get the connection, and then it's a terrific breakaway goal and at a perfect moment. What was that? Maybe 5 or 6 minutes after Servette had scored. So yeah, the reality is that it's a miss. It's a bad miss. I doubt someone of Danilo's experience with the number of goals that he scored it'll be playing on his mind too much. I'm sure. I think he'll be quite keen to get going and get another goal, and that will be him. That'll be it banished from his mind, thankfully. But yeah, at that point, you're starting to think that looks like a tap in on the face of it. And yeah, what's going to happen next?
Yeah, it does indeed. And I think it's been interesting because we will talk about Jose Cifuentes. It's been interesting as we talk a little bit around. You mentioned at the start how we'd like to have seen this team start the season, and obviously Kilmarnock was the bump, but we're starting to kind of click into it. I thought Livingston showed that as well when we were starting to see positionally where certain players were, who was going to drop, who was going to run. And I know obviously you're the tactics expert on our Patreon site. there's an element to that which I think, yeah, you can talk about the tactics, but there's a nuance to it where you have to ensure that you know how players are going to move, you know if you go front post, back post, etc. And that's just part of the team coming into it. Cifuentes, for me, he's up to speed because obviously we know he's been involved in MLS games prior to coming into us. I think he's fitted into that team seamlessly. That cross that you mentioned for Danilo was exquisite. But I was surprised, Adam. I'm keen to get your thoughts on this about how far forward he got a lot. I thought he might venture forward on the odd occasion, but it seemed to me as if he was playing, pretty far up, certainly further than I thought he would on a fairly consistent basis.
Yeah, I guess that role. I watched a couple of games, LAFC ones, and he was sort of playing in that area. But it's obviously a different. I was going to say a different ball game over there, but it's not. It's the same ball game, but a different, different over there in terms of I guess how they play, the pace of the games, all that sort of stuff. So, I was more interested, and then with Bill saying he could play a little bit deeper as well, I was more interested in seeing how we did that because he didn't look that well suited to it. I have to say, but he has been playing that little bit further forward, and I think it's great. I think that's been exactly what we've needed in there. I really liked that balance. I can't decide whether Nico Raskin, I prefer him as a sort of deeper line number 6 or that sort of box to box energy that we've seen in the second half. I think it's just great that we've got a player that can do both, and I think from the small amounts that we've seen of Cifuentes, he probably won't be far off as well. I think I could see him sitting there and just sort of recycling possession at the base of the midfield, but also that energy and passing ability that he's got. So it was a great start. I think it's been a great start. I think he's fitted in very well, like you said. But sort of having the two of them now is just something that we've not had for a while. Those kind of complete midfielders, if you like, that can be attacking, they can be defensive, they can play in a 2, they can play in a 3, they can play in a diamond, as we've seen as well in this game. So having the both of them now, with Cantwell at the top and with Ryan Jack behind them, adding in Lammers and Dow, that's starting to look quite tidy in there for me.
And it was interesting because I think, we have discussed, I think, a lot in terms of how that midfield was going to look and operate once those players, once you started to kind of move the dominoes a little bit and shuffle it around a little bit so that you could kind of come into that. Raskin, I thought it was interesting because I don't think Raskin had a great first half, but I thought he was exceptional in the second half. And I don't know if that was a confidence thing. I don't know if the manager just wanted to play him a little bit more loosely. What's interesting to me, though, is that if we've got Raskin's energy that you've mentioned, but also the opportunity for Fuentes to get forward, and I think sometimes what we've lacked from some of those midfields being able to try and go forward, Cantwell's the exception to this, obviously, but that quality in the final third, whether it's going to be playing in that cross or a defence splitting pass or even, shooting, I think sometimes we've come up short there recently, but it's a very interesting combination to have.
Definitely, and I think you're right. I think we've seen Cantwell has had a lot of end product towards the end of last season, playing a little bit deeper this year at times. So it's maybe understandable pass or final shot guy at the minute. But yeah, that end product in terms of getting up into the box and getting the passes off, I think is going to be really crucial. And like you said, Raskin, Cifuentes, and Cantwell are all going to be arriving in and around the box at various points, and certainly Cifuentes and Cantwell have shown. In the past, Cantwell with Rangers and Cifuentes with LAFC, they've shown that they can finish if the chances come to them. So that's a big thing I think we're lacking is shots. I don't want to say outside the box, but certainly shots from range, that sort of edge of the box type shot, and then also someone in the box who can finish as well as a midfielder. I think that's key to spread the goals around, and they look like they can do it.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting. Again, as I mentioned there, I think once you have the quality being able to try and come in there, then I think your attacking options go a lot further spread. I think it's fair to say because we have seen obviously within recent blueprints of how we've tried to set up that we want to be able to try and utilise the wings.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I've got to give credit to him because he has come under some fire recently. But I think Borna Barisic has started the season really well. He obviously played a key part in the goal, but I go back to Saturday's game against Livingston and the setup for Danilo's head and stuff as well. But Borna has fit into that, and I think that we were talking during the game against Servette on Tuesday about probably that lack of quality of crosses coming in. And I think it was our boy Martin that said, it's 1 in 40, but that 1 in 40 hits where it needs to hit. But Borna, I think, has looked far more consistent within this, and he's looked a little bit like that player that we could rely on previously.
Definitely. Three assists in a week, and three big ones as well, you have to say. When you think it was obviously the second goal against Servette, then the second goal against Livingston, which was huge in that game. And then the one the other night, which puts us through. So big moments. I think he's always been that guy that will come up with those sort of big crosses when you need them. Like you say, the volume, I guess, is an issue. That how easily we go out to both fullbacks, and just sort of use that almost as a crutch to have them swinging the balls in. If we can, I guess, reduce that dependency on them, and use them just in key moments when we see fit, then I think absolutely he can have that impact in the final third. The big thing for me with Barisic is and it's the same with Tavernier at this moment in time as well. There's just always that propensity for them to switch off, for a ball to come in on their blind side, and for them to lose their man and we concede a goal, or to get done one on one. There were a couple of shaky moments, I think, for Barisic in the first half where I thought his marker was going to get the better of him. Tavernier had more than a couple, so that is the issue. But you can't deny, certainly for Barisic, you can't deny when he gets on the ball just at that edge of the box on the left hand side with a little bit of space, he's finding his man 9 times out of 10, which is a really, really good thing to have. I guess the debate, and it's a similar debate on the other side, that one dimension, or that dimension that they've got that are good, that you want to see for your players. That one dimension that they've got doesn't make up for some of the deficiencies that they've got, and I guess that's the debate that we've been having for a few seasons now.
I think, I mean, and again, focusing and continue to focus on the positives. I do want to be able to do, and this is my second in a row this week, a special piece of praise for Jack Butland. I mentioned on Monday's show, Adam, about Butland didn't have to do a lot against Livingston, but it's the old Rangers goalkeeping adage, isn't it? You don't have to make a lot of saves, but the saves you have to make. And I think Jack Butland did that well against Livingston for at least one in particular, which I mentioned. He got down towards his left-hand post. Against Servette, through 1-1, and I think he's just got tremendous reflexes to get down low to his right-hand side. I know that there's people saying about it's not a great hit and blah, 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 but the biggest compliment I can pay Butland, and again, this is the second time I'm doing it in a week, is that he looked like the Alan McGregor that we all fell in love with. Not, we know that the latter part of where McGregor was at and stuff and why he had to be replaced, and it just went a little bit too far from him in terms of we should have replaced him earlier. But I'm talking about the vintage Alan McGregor, and as it turns out, Butland has now been given the nickname The Wall. I can understand why. The goal that we conceded, I think, there was, again, some overly harsh criticism, in my opinion. John Suter doesn't cover himself in glory. I understand that. Goldson and Tavernier tried to go out to block the shot that comes in, but it's a worldie, and it was going to have to take a worldie to be able to try and beat Butland. And again, I'm just really pleased with how well he's come into not only the team, but from the sound of it, from the manager and his teammates, the dressing room as well. He's establishing himself in there too.
Yeah, I think all the way back to his first interview with RTV. Obviously, we know England players, and particularly England players that are in and around the national team are going to be media trained to win within an inch of his life. But he sort of, anytime I've asked him a question, he just sort of, not necessarily bats it off, but it's quite smooth to answer. It's almost like it's automatic, and he's just very chilled and very confident in his own ability, and he backs himself. And I think that sort of comes across now. He's definitely been a bit of a calming presence. I don't think he's had necessarily, he didn't have much to do pre-season wise, other than I guess the first half against Hoffenheim, and then maybe the first couple of games of the season. But you're spot on. Livingston and Servette, he's come up with three, I would say, three big saves at key moments in those games, which have really helped us out. I've been impressed with, I guess, some of the other little bits as well, like you mentioned, the sort of corral on the back line, like McGregor used to do. I thought his footwork for the save that he made, the early one, just that way he moves his feet just to position himself and get himself down quicker, considering he's 6'5". I thought that was really impressive. And then coming out to sort of claim some balls, as we know, those are very, very risky. You come out and you claim it, and people sort of take it for granted. But when you come out and you don't get it, you see the difference. So I think it's a risky game, and I can understand partly why McGregor would just stay on his line and sort of back himself to try and save things. But I don't think we can underestimate how valuable it is for a defender to know that they're going to have a giant coming up over the top of them and clasping the ball in key moments. So I think all in all, it's been a very, very good start for him.
Now, obviously, I kind of mentioned there, and you know, I do want to be able to try and play a bit of kind of devil's advocate because there has been some criticism for your man Tavernier. I've struggled to see where he was at fault for the goal that we conceded against Servette, and I think you made a great point on. I think it was one of our daily update shows on our Patreon site about there has to be a recalibration, in my opinion, Adam, of the Rangers support's expectation of James Tavernier. He's not the James Tavernier that we had 5-6 years ago, where he's bombing up and down the line. I think that, if I'm being honest with you, I think domestically, for sure, with opposition teams have got wise to him, so they will try and look at being able to potentially expose his defensive frailties, but also do what they can to try and stop him producing balls into the box. But all that being said, you can't escape Father Time forever. There's no harm in saying that he has lost a slight bit of that pace and a slight bit of that edge. But I have seen, a lot said about the fact that he could be doing better. I don't know if he needs dropped. I don't know if he needs a rest. I hope, and we will talk about Morton shortly, I hope he doesn't play against Greenock Morton, because I think under probably 3 managers now, he's been overutilised at times where we probably could have seen us do without him just for that particular game, predominantly, domestic cup games. Where are you at with him? Do you think that some of the criticism levelled at him, do you think it's fair? Do you think it's overly harsh? Where are you at?
So, first off, I don't think as far as James Tavernier is concerned, I don't think there'll ever be a recalibrating of expectations. I think he polarises the fan base in a way that I don't think I've ever seen before. It fascinates me, the hatred that he gets, and it's not something I'll ever understand. It's almost like people decided in the Scottish Cup final of 2015 that he was rubbish, and regardless of how silly they've looked over the piece with some of the great things that he's done, as soon as there is a lapse, they'll say, "I told you." So I think that recalibration that you mentioned is absolutely valid when he's getting to the point of 32, but I don't think that will be taken into account. I think it will just be, I guess, as we're seeing just now, people saying, "I told you he was rubbish all along. Look, here he is, rubbish now." Regardless of the context that you mentioned in terms of the age. Where am I at now with it? I think there's definitely an argument that James Tavernier, fitness-wise, has dropped off since, I guess, Seville, probably, you would say. I think he started last season quite slowly. There was all the chat about injuries, etc., and then he sort of came back into it. So yeah, I think pretty much since he turned 30, which happens to quite a lot of players, I think particularly players with as many miles in the legs and that cover as much ground up and down the flank, I think that will naturally start to dip. I don't see an issue with that. I don't know if that's admitting defeat or anything like that. So I think that's fair. I think this season, no, absolutely not. He's not been great. Still coming up with the moment. Obviously, the penalty in the first game, and then obviously the goal in this game, which is fantastic, ghosting in at the back post. But I guess where I am with it, Cammy, is I would like to see Sterling come in. I think I'm on record as saying a more defensive fullback in certain games, and I don't just mean Morton in the cup, like you would do like a backup goalkeeper or anything like that. I mean quite a number of games. I'd be quite happy to see a more defensive option come in there. But we struggle to score goals, Cammy. We always have struggled to score goals. So for me, I think we need to flip it around and say, if we're taking James Tavernier out of that team, who is delivering the goals? We need more goals than Tavernier has been delivering. So if we take him out of that team, we better be pretty sure that a defensive fullback who may not go over the halfway line for large parts of the game, we better be sure that the forwards and midfielders that we brought in are going to bring to the table what they need to bring to the table in terms of goals and assists. And again, it's the same on the other side with Barisic. If you take him out of the team, Ridvan isn't going to get as many pure assists as Barisic has. So it's key that other players step up to the plate and try and spread the wealth a little bit. But yeah, to answer your question, I think there have been some lapses. I thought there was a few in that first half, if I'm honest. I know what you're saying about the goal. I think Suter misses the header, and then from then it's a bit of a lottery because of that deflection that just goes straight to the attacker. I might have liked Tavernier to be a yard or two over so that he might have been able to close the guy down. But I'm not sure if he was ever going to be able to stop him shifting his weight on his right foot and pinging that in the top corner. And then there were a couple of others in that half. So it was a ropey first half, and to be honest, he got a little bit better in the second half, but I wouldn't say it was an outstanding second half performance in the way that Raskins was. I would say he did very, very well to gamble after that corner and go back in at the back post as he has done in the past and get the goal. But I thought it was a decent second half from him. Nowhere near as bad as he was in the first half, but not what I would say was great. So yeah, to answer your point, I'm more than relaxed about it. If we take him out and we bring someone else in and we change the way we attack, I think that's a solid point. However, we need to be sure that the players that we bring in are going to offer what he can in terms of goals.
Yeah, I mean, I think the one thing that I would like us to be able to do, right, and I'm not sold on the whole let's take Tav out. I think when I used the word recalibration earlier on, I think we could see him still maintain a position. I think that we need to, and I do think that's perfectly, I think it's a very fair ask to say to the midfielders and forwards that was spent a fair chunk of change on, let's remember that.
Yep.
You need to weigh in with this guy's goals. You need to weigh in with his contributions. And I don't want to take Tav off of penalties. What I do want to do, however, is look at us being able to think a little bit more about free kicks. They did have a couple against Servette, which I think, he could do a lot better with. I'm not saying about taking him off all set pieces. So like you say, stay on corners and that's all fine, right? I understand that. And there'll be people listening to this going, well, let's just do the whole kit and caboodle, keep him in penalties, take him off everything else.
Yeah.
But I think we can explore other options at free kicks because, especially domestically, we're going to have to think about how we use set pieces more to our advantage. And I think, again, coming back to that point of seeing a variety of different options within that, but we seem so stuck with that. It has to be Tav. No one else gets close to it, regardless of where it is positionally. It's Tav who takes it no matter what, unless it's for a left foot, in which obviously it'll be Borna. But that's it. That's your options. I'd love to see us explore that a little bit further.
Yeah, and I guess the important distinction is that he won't be deciding that he takes them all. is the point that I think quite a lot of people are missing, saying why is he doing this and why is he doing that. They won't be saying I am taking all of these. It's the manager and the coaching staff are deciding who's the best to do this, and rightly or wrongly they pick the two that they think are the best sort of set piece experts in terms of free kicks, or maybe the best crossers in terms of corners. But I agree with you. I think mixing it up makes us look a little bit less. It's a little bit less easy to, I guess, to counter and to understand what's happening. If we are putting in, I don't know, Cantwell to take some of the free kicks, or even Kieran Dowell, his left foot, to come in and take corners on the opposite side and try out swingers and in swingers. Yeah, I'm absolutely all for that. But I think we probably need to be mindful that it will be the manager that is deciding these things. And I guess until such times as one or both are out of the team for regular periods, I'm not quite sure we'll actually see it. But absolutely, I'd be all for it to mix things up.
I think even Todd Cantwell's got wise to it because he doesn't seem to be doing that thing any longer that he used to do, where he would run over as if he was going to get a chance to take a corner and then Tab would tell him to bugger off. I think he's just kind of given up the ghost on it now, which is fair enough, and I think that happens. So let's look at Greenock Morton then, Adam, and I think you'd mentioned earlier on you'd like to see Dijon Sterling start that game. I take it that says right back?
Yeah, no, I think so. I think certainly Tavernier, if he has been quite sluggish, etc. He is getting to that, like I said, 32 in a couple of months. I think these are the games that ideally you'd be wanting to do that. We've got a few big games coming up before the international break as well, so it seems like an obvious one for me. We don't know if we thought Ridvan was back for this game. We thought Ben Davies was possibly back in training at the start of this week. We'll have to wait and see when the press conference comes tomorrow to see exactly what's there, but I would be happy. I don't know how many changes he thinks is going to be enough. Realistically, he could be changing that back five, I guess. Bringing in Ross McCrory, bringing in Robbie McCrory, Balogun, Davies or King even, and having Ridvan and Sterling on the flanks would seem sensible. I don't know if that's too many, but I just think with what we've mentioned with the fullbacks, and then obviously the two centre backs have been struggling with injury over the past few months as well. So it might make sense to give them a miss too. So in theory, you could see a brand new back five, and you would think it's still going to be enough to get us going against Greenock Morton. So yeah, I'd be all for that.
It's an interesting conundrum because I know, I mean, I don't really like being able to try and look at where we are for playing League Cup games this early on in the season. But listen, we've got no control over that. But I think what is interesting is that you would say, obviously, we'll have one eye on PSV. I think that's totally understandable. And in some instances, as we've just discussed, there may be some players who are not in great form and so probably could do with a little bit of a rest, and then we'll take it from there. But there's obviously a counter argument to say that, since the beginning of the season, one of the things that we've heard in repetition is we want this team to gel, we want them to bond. So almost could feel counterproductive to say, well, listen, let's make changes and let's take some of them out because then they're not getting that game time that they actually need. There's elements of this where I think, Adam, for me, I'm not going to disrespect Greenock Morton by saying, we could just play, a second string or a third string or whatever. I think we're not in a position where we're so trophy laden that we can just, be so coy with the idea of us being able to tinker around with teams when we were into our cup competitions. I'm very confident we'll beat Greenock Morton. I'm not suggesting for a minute that it'll cause us too many problems. However, that being said, I would look at it as an opportunity to play guys like Sterling and also Cyril Dessers as well, because I am probably not understanding this furore around Dessers, and people have written him off, etc., etc. That's already kind of happened. I'm not really getting it, but I think Morton presents an opportunity for him to get what I think he needs. Two things really, actually, is some solid game time, which I think will help with his overall fitness, because I think that is in question. And also, if he can get a couple of goals, I think it gives him that increase in confidence. I think it gives him a little bit more self-assuredness. And I just think it helps settle everything down slightly, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, I'm in the same boat as you. Dessers, it's fine to say Dessers hasn't really been great without saying he is hopeless and a waste of space. This race to
But that's what we do. Everything's either sugar or shite. Everyone's either absolutely brilliant or utterly terrible.
This race to have an early opinion is
Yeah.
never stops. It's relentless, and we think, oh, that'll be great. We'll get some new players in, and we get a bit of time, and then literally 20 minutes against Kilmarnock, he was hopeless. It's never going to change. That expectation is always going to be there, rightly or wrongly. Rightly, I think, in my opinion, because when you hit that expectation, then you get loved by the support more than you ever have anywhere else. So I don't have an issue with the expectation. I think we just maybe need to just realign a little bit. The guy's come in, he scored goals everywhere he's been. He has had an injury, and he's back in, and he's maybe not quite up to speed yet. There isn't much time though, I would say, Cammy, to sort of get up to speed. If it's a case of getting to the international window, and then maybe spending a bit of time working on his fitness, etc., then okay. But I think after that, we really need to start seeing a Cyril Dessers that's at full peak fitness, so that we can judge fully. I would say between then and Christmas, but again, the positives here maybe similar to Danilo. He's getting into good positions. I think he's had moments in every game, I think, where he's maybe been unlucky not to score or made a mess of it, if that makes sense. But he's been in the positions that I think will set him in good stead. So I'm not terribly worried about him. I think he is a number 9 who will need service. His link up play, etc., will be fine. Better than Cholak probably, even though we've maybe not seen that so far. But he is more, I guess, of that mould for me of a number 9 who needs to get service into the box. Will probably be able to create some chances in the box for himself, but we're going to need to. And again, this is other players, I guess, stepping up to the plate, as we've seen with Raskin and Cifuentes and Cantwell, getting beyond, getting into the box, giving him support to sort of get into those areas that we know he's going to excel in. He's not going to be this one man wrecking ball up there. I don't think we're going to have to meet him halfway and try and give him everything that he needs. But yeah, he hasn't been good, and I think you're right. I think the weekend is definitely a good opportunity for him, Danilo, Lammers, all to play again and all to just get more up to speed with each other, and for the players deeper than that, the central midfielders and the fullbacks, etc., just to understand the type of runs that they're making, when to give them the ball, when they're going to drop off, all that sort of stuff that only really comes from playing games and training together. I think we need another go at that at the weekend, very much so.
Yeah, and listen, I think that's fair. It's like I say. I mean, I'm not going to be blasé about it because it's not like, as I say, we've been inundated with cup wins that means that we can decide to put out a second 11 or a third 11. And I know that Neil Banfield will be taking the press conference on Friday. And it will probably have a heavy involvement in terms of how the team sets up and what we can do at that stage. So it'll be interesting to see as to how that unfolds. But again, as I say, hopefully it'll be a relatively straightforward game for us as well. And most importantly, players get a decent run out as well, and let's avoid any kind of form of injuries. It's a 12:30 kickoff on Saturday, Adam. It'll be on the telly as well, but I do expect a full Ibrox. It's a good wee day out. An early kickoff on a Saturday's pretty good. You can get that done. You can enjoy the 3 p.m.s and stuff. But I also think it'll be a pretty decent crowd on Saturday as well.
Yeah, one of the bonuses, I guess, of Champions League football, other than hopefully not getting an absolute doing like last year, will be more Saturday football, which I think is absolutely welcome. So yeah, hopefully it's a decent crowd, and yeah, you can't really complain. I think Saturday 12:30 for me is much better than the cup games that we've had recently, where it's been 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock on a Sunday night. Those are not ideal at all. So yeah, I'll take this every day of the week.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well,
So
except Sunday, because I just said Sundays were rubbish. So.
yeah, exactly. But I mean, I think it's always interesting too when you hear people saying, "I enjoy the Thursday, Sundays. I think it always works and stuff." I was like, "Well, yeah, but there is obviously the opportunity to be able to get into the Champions League, and I don't think we can we can't count our chickens yet, so it will be interesting to see what happens against PSV as well. But we will talk about that or a little bit more on Heart and Hands, the flagship show on Monday. David will be back in the hot seat as per. Just a couple of wee bits just to give you some attention as well, folks. I've got to give a plug to my good friend, our good friend, Martin Ramsey. The Pursuit of History, his next book comes out at the beginning of August. It's available now for pre-order on the Heart and Hand website, heartandhand.co.uk. This is the well, it's not necessarily a sequel, Adam. He's calling it, a different book altogether, all based obviously across the fantastic Dominant series that we did on our Patreon site. Very much looking forward to seeing this. He's put a ton of work into it, and I honestly can't wait to get my hands on it.
Yeah, I think from what he said, it will be a kind of different kind of book. I guess we see with 9 in a row, when it sort of starts off and you're almost building up the way. You're full of hope as to what you can achieve, but then I think we all know when it got to the sort of middle of that, there was a lot more maybe tension and stress. I think Walter Smith said himself, he almost, not that he couldn't enjoy them, but it was almost like, okay, right, that one's done, let's move on to the next one and keep going. So that, I think that pressure and the stress and maybe the lack of future proofing and forward planning, I think all of that will be included in the book. And yeah, I'm sure it'll be a fantastic read like the other ones were.
Yeah, absolutely. So please jump onto the website, folks, and get your pre-orders in for that as well. And some great news as well, Adam. You and I are coming back to New Edmondson House as well. So we sold out the live show back in May. We must have done all right because they've asked us to come back for the 1st of December. It was a privilege to play NEH the first time around. I cannot wait for the second time around now that we've broken our duck and we had a great time at the show. But it's something surreal when so many people turn up to hear you talk nonsense about Rangers.
Yeah, really looking forward to it. I think like you said, the one we maybe didn't quite know what to expect. At that first one, we certainly didn't think we'd sell it out in the record time that we did. With this one coming up to the festive season as well, it's a really nice kickoff, and I think is it a couple of weeks before the League Cup final, etc. as well. So there could be a hope, a chance for a bit of a preview on that as well. So yeah, it's all looking good. Really looking forward to getting back up there as well. Like I said, it was a brilliant experience that last time, and now we're a little bit more prepared about the scale and the size and how everything works. Hopefully, we can put on an even better show this time.
I think my favourite part about that show was giving you a seat because you hadn't long come out of an operation and you sat in it for, I think, a sum total of about 30 seconds.
Yeah, and I nearly passed out towards the end and had to actually go on it. Yeah, so I'll be in a bit better form this time, hopefully.
Yeah, I'm sure you will be, my friend. I'm just worried about Andy McGowan's wardrobe. I mean, I do on a daily basis anyway, but I just get no idea what the hell that guy's going to wear this time around. So, yeah, he's got a couple of months to get that sorted out. Tickets will be available very shortly. Folks, keep an eye not only on our socials in Heartland, but obviously the New Edmondson House socials as well, because as a New Edmondson House member, you get a pre-link to that, as do our chief executives over on our Patreon site. I've mentioned it a couple of times, as I always do on our free shows, but if you fancy joining us on a brilliant Rangers community, head on over to patreon.com/heart and hand. Our extra shows are brought to you in association with Zenith Coins. Please jump over to their site to be able to do that. And as a chief exec subscriber, we've had the fortunate position to make some exclusive heart and hand coins as well, and we put them into a competition. And yeah, it's been great to see people being able to receive them as well. My thanks to our executive producers in London, Mr. Mike Lee and Mr. Paul Myers. And most importantly, thank you very much to my very good friend Adam for coming on. A fairly decent synopsis, I think, of Servette, and I think we're looking forward now. I'm starting to look forward towards the League Cup kicking off for us as well on Saturday.
Yeah, definitely. I think great to get through against Servette. PSV will be a totally different challenge. One that maybe comes a little bit too early for us, but we'll certainly give it a go as we did last year. But yeah, great to get through, and thanks for having me on.
As I say, folks, if you'd love to hear more from us, then jump over to our Patreon site. David will be back on Monday. Have a brilliant weekend. Let's enjoy it, and let's get through to the next round of the Cup. Thanks so much for listening, everybody.